coffee should not be this powerful. It's just roasted seeds. That's how this story begins. Tiny fruits growing on mountainsides in Ethiopia, Colombia, Brazil, and dozens of other countries. And somehow, humans turn them into one of the most important drinks on Earth. More than 2 billion cups are consumed every single day. Entire cities wake up because of coffee. Businesses are built on it. Relationships begin over it. Students survive because of it. People spend more money on coffee every year than they do on almost any other beverage. And yet most people have absolutely no idea what they're drinking. Because a latte, a cappuccino, a flat white, an Americano, and a cold brew all look completely different. But underneath the foam, milk, caramel, and ice, they are surprisingly connected. Because almost every major coffee drink begins with exactly the same thing. A tiny shot of espresso. And once you understand that, the entire coffee menu suddenly becomes a lot less mysterious. 2 billion cups every day coffee menus often feel overwhelming. Walk into a modern cafe, and you're immediately confronted with names from different countries, different traditions, and different eras. Americano, latte, cappuccino, flat white, macchiato, mocha, cold brew, nitro cold brew. And somehow every person standing in line seems to know exactly what all of them mean. But here's the secret. Coffee is actually one of the simplest food systems on Earth. Most drinks are simply different combinations of 3 elements: espresso, milk, water. Change the ratio, and you create an entirely different experience. Some drinks become stronger. Some become softer. Some become sweeter. Some become rituals, and some become part of people's identities. Over the next 12 minutes, we're going to travel through the drinks that built modern coffee culture. From the tiny Italian espresso to the cold brew revolution that conquered social media. And by the end, you won't just know what these drinks are. You'll understand why millions of people love them. Everything begins here. Espresso. Not a bean. Not a roast. A brewing method, and one of the most influential food inventions of the last century. Before espresso existed, coffee was slower. People boiled water, waited, steeped coffee grounds, then waited some more. But the world was changing. Factories were growing. Cities were expanding. People moved faster than ever before, and coffee had to keep up. In the early 20th century, Italian inventors began experimenting with machines that could force hot water through finely ground coffee under pressure. The result was extraordinary. Coffee that could be prepared in seconds, smaller than traditional coffee, stronger than traditional coffee, and packed with flavor. Workers could step into a cafe, drink a coffee while standing at the counter, and return to work almost immediately. Espresso wasn't simply a new drink. It was a solution to a faster world. Today, almost every major coffee drink begins with espresso. Latte, cappuccino, flat white, mocha, macchiato, Americano. All of them start here. What makes espresso special is concentration. The pressure extracts oils, aromas, sugars, acids, and bitter compounds into a tiny amount of liquid. That's why a single sip can feel surprisingly powerful. A great espresso might taste like dark chocolate, caramel, toasted nuts, berries, citrus, sometimes even flowers. A bad espresso tastes like someone accidentally brewed a burnt tree branch. And then there's the crema, that golden foam resting on top. For coffee lovers, it's often the first sign that something special happened inside the machine. Because espresso isn't just concentrated coffee. It's coffee compressed into its purest expression, like an entire novel condensed into a single paragraph. The Americano exists because of culture shock. During World War II, American soldiers stationed in Italy discovered espresso for the first time. And for many of them, it was a lot. American coffee at the time was usually larger, weaker, and consumed over longer periods. Espresso felt intense, almost aggressive, So soldiers began adding hot water to it, not to create something new, simply to make it feel familiar. That simple adjustment created one of the most popular coffee drinks on earth, the Americano, espresso plus hot water. That's it. No milk, no foam, no chocolate, nothing hiding the coffee itself. Which is why Americanos often reveal more about the espresso underneath than almost any other drink. Good espresso becomes a beautiful Americano. Bad espresso becomes impossible to ignore. That's part of its appeal. An Americano feels honest. Every flavor is exposed. Every strength and weakness becomes visible, which is why many coffee enthusiasts love it. There are no distractions, no safety nets, just coffee. It's also become the unofficial drink of productivity culture. Writers, programmers, office workers, founders, people arriving at work before sunrise, people answering emails nobody wants to answer, people trying to finish one more project before the deadline. An Americano feels purposeful, less comforting than a latte, less playful than a mocha, more direct, like coffee stripped down to its essentials. Because sometimes that's exactly what people want. Not comfort, not dessert. Just clarity. Then coffee changes personality completely. The latte. If espresso represents intensity, the latte represents comfort. Because milk transforms coffee in ways that few ingredients can. The fat soften bitterness, the protein smooth texture, the sweetness naturally balances darker flavors. Suddenly the sharp edges disappear. The coffee becomes softer, rounder, more approachable, and that transformation helped create modern cafe culture. Because most people don't fall in love with coffee through espresso. They fall in love through drinks like the latte. The first coffee many people truly enjoy isn't the strongest one. It's the one that feels welcoming, which helps explain why lattes became so popular around the world. They're not just drinks, they're environments. Think about the places where people usually order them. Coffee shops during rainy afternoons, university libraries during exam season, weekend mornings, long conversations, first dates, people reading books alone, people working remotely. The latte became connected to moments rather than caffeine. And that's a big reason for its success. A latte doesn't demand attention. It doesn't challenge you. It invites you to stay longer, to slow down, to settle in, to make yourself comfortable. Because while espresso was built for speed, the latte accidentally became one of the symbols of modern relaxation. And that's a remarkable transformation. The same espresso, the same coffee bean, the same origin, yet an entirely different emotional experience. If the latte became global comfort, the cappuccino remained deeply connected to Italy. Walk into an Italian cafe early in the morning and you'll find people drinking cappuccinos while standing at the bar. Not for hours. Not while working on laptops. Just a few minutes. A quick ritual before the day begins. That's because coffee culture in Italy developed differently. Coffee wasn't designed as an all-day activity. It was woven into daily life through small moments. And the cappuccino became one of those moments. What makes it different is the foam. A cappuccino traditionally balances espresso, steamed milk, and milk foam in nearly equal proportions. That foam creates thousands of tiny air pockets. The result feels lighter than a latte, almost cloud-like, less dense, more playful. The flavor changes too. The foam spreads aromas differently. The texture becomes part of the experience, and suddenly drinking coffee feels slightly theatrical. It's one reason cappuccinos photograph so beautifully, and why they remain one of the most recognizable coffee drinks in the world. Because a cappuccino isn't just consumed, it's experienced. Then comes the flat white, the drink that helped launch modern specialty coffee culture. Australia and New Zealand still debate who invented it, but regardless of who gets credit, the flat white changed coffee. Unlike a cappuccino, the flat white uses much less foam, but the foam it does use is incredibly important. Microfoam, tiny bubbles, is almost invisible, silky, velvety, smooth. The goal isn't volume, it's precision. Everything about a flat white feels deliberate. The cup is smaller. The coffee flavor is stronger. The milk supports the espresso instead of dominating it, which is why many coffee enthusiasts consider it the perfect balance. Strong enough to showcase the coffee, soft enough to remain approachable. And as specialty coffee shops expanded around the world, the flat white expanded with them. Because it represented something bigger than a drink. It represented craftsmanship, attention to detail, the belief that small improvements matter. And that's really what specialty coffee culture is about. Not making coffee more complicated, making it more intentional. For most people, coffee love begins with a compromise. Not with espresso, not with bitterness, not with strong black coffee, with sweetness. And that's exactly where the mocha enters the story. Because the mocha is what happens when coffee and chocolate stop competing and start working together. Espresso, milk, chocolate. 3 ingredients. One of the most universally loved coffee drinks ever created. And the combination makes perfect sense. Coffee and chocolate already share surprisingly similar flavor compounds. Both can taste nutty, earthy, fruity, roasted, complex. Together they soften each other's rough edges. Chocolate reduces the perception of bitterness. Milk smooths the texture. The result feels less intimidating than espresso, and more indulgent than a latte. That's why for millions of people around the world, the mocha becomes their first real step into coffee culture. Not because they were searching for caffeine, but because they were searching for comfort. Think about where mochas appear most often. Cold winter afternoons, holiday seasons, Christmas markets, coffee shops filled with cinnamon and warm lights. The mocha feels less like a beverage and more like a reward. And maybe that's why it remains so popular. Because adulthood comes with responsibilities, deadlines, bills, stress. But for a few minutes, a mocha allows coffee to feel playful again. Like drinking a childhood memory that grew up with you. Then something changed. Coffee stopped being just coffee. It became culture, identity, routine, lifestyle. And few drinks represent that transformation better than the caramel macchiato. Traditional Italian coffee culture values simplicity. Espresso, milk, done. The caramel macchiato belongs to a different era. An era of personalization, choice, customization. An era where people don't simply order coffee, they build it. Extra shot, oat milk, almond milk, half sweet, extra caramel, extra foam. Every modification says something about the person ordering it. And that's fascinating, because for most of human history, food reflected where people came from. Today, food often reflects who people believe they are. Coffee became part of that shift. The morning order became a ritual, a routine repeated hundreds of times across years. People know exactly how they like their coffee. Not because they consciously think about it, but because routines become identities. The caramel macchiato didn't become famous because it was traditional. It became famous because it understood modern life. A little sweetness, a little indulgence, a little comfort, a little caffeine. And for millions of people, that combination became part of everyday life. Because sometimes the product isn't the point. The feeling is. The routine is. The familiar moment in an unpredictable day. For more than a century, modern coffee culture was built around heat, hot water, hot drinks, hot cups. Then cold brew arrived and changed the rules. Because cold brew isn't simply cold coffee. It's a completely different extraction process. Instead of using heat, cold brew uses time. Coffee grounds sit in cold water for 12, sometimes 18, sometimes 24 hours. And something fascinating happens. Many of the compounds responsible for bitterness and acidity are extracted differently. The result tastes smoother, sweeter, rounder, even when no sugar is added. That's why people often describe cold brew as surprisingly easy to drink, especially during summer. But cold brew didn't just arrive at the right flavor. It arrived at the right moment. Modern cities were changing. People wanted portable drinks, iced drinks, drinks that fit fast-moving lifestyles. Cold brew felt modern, minimal, clean, photogenic, and social media helped accelerate everything. Suddenly, coffee wasn't only something consumed in cafes. It became something carried through cities, something held during walks, something visible. Then nitro cold brew appeared. Nitrogen gas infused into coffee. Tiny bubbles cascading through the glass. The visual effect looked almost magical. Coffee had become a performance, and people loved it. Because humans don't just drink with their mouths, they drink with their eyes. Coffee may be global, but people rarely drink it the same way. In Finland, some people place pieces of cheese into hot coffee. The cheese softens, absorbs flavor, and becomes part of the experience. In Vietnam, coffee evolved differently. During periods when milk was difficult to obtain, cafes began whipping egg yolks with sugar. The result became Vietnamese egg coffee. Rich, creamy, unexpectedly luxurious. In Turkey, coffee is often prepared directly in a small pot called a şezve. The grounds remain in the cup. The drink becomes stronger, thicker, more intense, and older than most modern coffee traditions. Every culture adapted coffee to local ingredients, local tastes, local realities, which reveals something deeper. Coffee itself isn't the remarkable part. Human creativity is. People were given the same ingredient and created hundreds of different traditions, hundreds of different rituals, hundreds of different meanings. Because food rarely stays the same once humans adopt it, we reshape it, and eventually, it begins telling our story instead. Coffee survived because it solved a practical problem. People needed energy. People needed focus. People needed to stay awake. But that explanation no longer feels complete, because if coffee were only about caffeine, people would consume it differently. They wouldn't spend hours in cafes. They wouldn't travel across cities for a specific coffee shop. They wouldn't build routines around it. They wouldn't attach memories to it. Yet they do. Because somewhere along the way, coffee stopped being fuel and became ritual. A student ordering the same latte every morning before class. A writer sitting in the same corner every weekend. Friends meeting every Sunday for cappuccinos. Parents sharing coffee before the rest of the house wakes up. Tiny moments, repeated thousands of times, until they become part of a life. That's the strange thing about coffee. Most people remember the conversation, the person, the season, the feeling, not the drink itself. The coffee simply happened to be there, quietly connecting those moments together. And maybe that's why coffee became one of the most important drinks in human history. Not because of what it does chemically, but because of what it does socially, emotionally, culturally. The beans may come from mountains on the other side of the world, but eventually, they become part of somebody's daily story. And that's a remarkable journey for something that began as a small fruit growing on a tree. So, what's your coffee personality? Are you an Americano, a latte, a cold brew, or something completely different? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey through the world of coffee, subscribe for more food and drinks explained, because every ingredient has a story. And we're just getting started.